The Caribbean just became a war zone, and Venezuela's drug cartels are the target. While the world focuses on conflicts elsewhere, President Donald Trump is making a massive military statement that could reshape the entire war on drugs. The U.S. has ordered 10 F-35 fighter jets to be deployed to Puerto Rico as the Trump administration steps up its war on drug cartels, with sources confirming that 10 of the advanced fighter jets are being sent to an airfield in Puerto Rico as part of operations against Latin American drug cartels designated narco-terrorist organizations by Washington. This isn't just another military exercise. This is a direct message to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his cartel allies. So what exactly is happening in the Caribbean, and why is Trump deploying America's most advanced stealth fighters against drug cartels? To understand the magnitude of this deployment, we need to look at what the F-35 Lightning II represents.
The U.S. Navy reportedly sending at least 7 vessels, including 3 guided missile destroyers, to the waters off Venezuela.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro issues a warning to the United States that an attack against him could be, quote, the beginning of the end of the American empire. Maduro made his remarks without offering further details on exactly what he meant.
Venezuela is not controlled by a government. It's actually been taken over by El Cartel de los Soles, which is a terrorist organization.
We have to take any enemy seriously. We cannot dismiss any threat they may come up with.
Volunteers as old as 75 turned up to enlist, even those with trouble hearing. That shows the level of some Venezuelans' enthusiasm to join the militia.
All 3 vessels are Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. They each carry dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles, able to hit targets on land and at sea.
Whether the cartel in Venezuela decides to close shop and move out of there, or they decide to try to confront President Trump, it's up to them. But I will tell you, just ask the Sinaloa cartel or ask ISIS if it's a good idea to confront President Trump, and I think the answer is pretty obvious.
So this militia of housewives and retirees, is it a match for the U.S. military? I'm not so sure. And what nobody's talking about is Venezuela's leadership. They're aware that this new army they've created.
The F-35s being sent to Puerto Rico are usually used for large bombing missions like the targeting of Iran's nuclear facilities, a 5th-generation supersonic fighter jet known for its lethality. These aren't just any aircraft, they're among the most sophisticated and expensive military assets in the world, capable of penetrating enemy airspace undetected and delivering precision strikes with devastating accuracy. F-35s are highly advanced stealth fighters and would be effective in combat against Venezuela's Air Force, which includes F-16 aircraft. The fact that Trump is deploying these particular jets sends a clear signal about the seriousness of his intentions. But this deployment didn't happen in a vacuum. The escalation began with a deadly incident that shocked the international community. On Tuesday, U.S. forces blew up a speedboat in the Caribbean that Trump said belonged to Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan criminal organization that he has tied to Maduro. Trump said 11 people were killed in the U.S. attack that Caracas labeled an extrajudicial killing of civilians, and which law experts have questioned regarding its legality. This marked the first time in decades that the U.S. military has conducted lethal strikes against what it claims are drug cartel operations, representing a dramatic shift from traditional law enforcement approaches to the drug war. The Venezuelan response was swift and provocative. On Thursday, 2 armed Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets flew over the Dunham, according to multiple Defense Department officials who described the action as a show of force. A U.S. official told Reuters that 2 Venezuelan F-16s flew over the USS Jason Dunham. The escalation and planned use of the highly advanced and costly
are shipped from China to Mexico in China's undeclared war against America and her citizens. And every day in funeral homes across this country, we see the tragic consequences of what has happened in this undeclared war. The families who were forced to say goodbye to their loved ones because of this scourge. And so today we announce a very significant seizure of 2 shipments of chemicals shipped on 2 different vessels on the high seas en route to the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico. From China to Mexico, the port of lading was Shanghai, China. The port of discharge, Mexico. What am I talking about? I'm talking about 363,000 pounds of benzyl alcohol, along with 334,000 pounds of N-methyl formamide. They would have been used to make 420,000 pounds of methamphetamine, which would have a street value here in Houston of $569 million, with a higher street value as you go up the northeastern seaboard to New York City.
Stealth aircraft come after the Pentagon sent out a public warning Thursday evening to Venezuela for its military aircraft flying near a Navy vessel, an act they labeled as a highly provocative move that interfered with the newly stepped-up U.S. operations in the region. Trump's response to these Venezuelan flyovers was characteristically direct and threatening. When asked about the incident, Trump made it crystal clear what would happen if Venezuelan aircraft posed a threat to American forces. "If they do put us in a dangerous position, they'll be shot down," he warned, leaving no room for misinterpretation about America's rules of engagement in the Caribbean. The F-35 deployment is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to America's military buildup in the region. Trump has so far deployed 5 U.S. vessels, a guided missile cruiser, 3 guided missile destroyers, and a nuclear-powered fast attack submarine to the Caribbean as part of the counter-drug mission. There are also 4,000 U.S. Marines reportedly involved in the deployment. The 22nd MEU party of the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, ARG, left Norfolk Archer 14 bound for the Southern Caribbean. That force included more than 4,500 sailors and Marines on 3 ships: the Wasp-class amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima and San Antonio-class amphibious transport dock ships, the USS San Antonio and USS Fort Lauderdale. This massive naval presence represents one of the largest U.S. military deployments in the Caribbean in recent memory, with capabilities ranging from amphibious assault to submarine warfare to advanced air superiority. The sheer scale of the operation suggests that Trump views the drug cartel threat as requiring a military solution rather than a law enforcement one. What we're witnessing is a fundamental shift in American strategy. The destruction of the speedboat and immediate deployment of F-35s demonstrates that the United States is no longer treating drug trafficking as merely a criminal matter.
Chicago kingpin, who went from dealing billions of dollars worth of drugs as one of North America's most successful cocaine traffickers to bringing down the infamous drug lord El Chapo as a government informant. He is former Sinaloa cartel kingpin Margarito J. Flores Jr., who joins us here on set. Jay, it's great to see you again. We've been together on several occasions. I feel like it's necessary every time to clarify for the audience why you are wearing that mask, why you're wearing the sunglasses.
Fear of persecution. My life will continue to be in danger. I testify against the most deadliest and powerful drug cartels that existed. So yes, it's for my safety. And I know that many individuals might think that I still look the same, and but I don't. But I do it for my safety.
Well, we can all appreciate that, testifying against El Chapo, going against the Sinaloa cartel. The Sinaloa cartel is one of the cartels, the primary cartel, in fact, that the Trump administration says they're going after and going on offense. What do you think about this as an approach, going on offense?
Well, it's great, especially today as kickoff, right? I returned that analogy, but taking it to where, the cartel's territories, as we saw with the bombing of a boat, with drug traffickers, I think it sends a clear message to every drug trafficking organization and cartel that the Trump administration is taking this very seriously, and they're not.
Instead, these cartels are being confronted with the full might of the American military, sending a clear message that drug trafficking operations will face unprecedented military consequences. At the center of this escalating conflict is Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, whom the Trump administration has directly accused of running a narco-state. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said on Fox and Friends that Maduro was running his country as a kingpin of a drug narco-state. From his side, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller described Maduro as an indicted drug trafficker and said Venezuela is being run by a drug cartel, a narco-trafficking organization. These aren't diplomatic criticisms, they're direct accusations that Venezuela's government is essentially a criminal enterprise. Maduro, for his part, has responded with a mixture of defiance and attempted diplomacy. None of the differences we have and have had can lead to a military conflict, Maduro said in a message broadcast on all of Venezuela's radio and television networks. Venezuela has always been willing to talk, to engage in dialogue, but we demand respect, he added. But his diplomatic overtures are undermined by his military preparations. Declaring his country prepared for armed struggle in defense of the national territory, he has mobilized Venezuela's military, which numbers around 340,000, and reservists, which he claims exceed 8 million. The strategic implicatio NS of this deployment extend far beyond just counter-narcotics operations. The U.S. president is weighing options for further strikes, including potentially attacking suspected drug cartel targets inside Venezuela. CNN reported on Friday, citing multiple sources briefed on the administration's plans. Such a strike would mark a major escalation. We're potentially looking at the first direct military strikes by the United States against targets within another sovereign nation's territory based solely on counter-narcotics justifications. The legal and strategic questions surrounding this approach are significant. The administration alleged they were members of the Tren de Aragua international gang and were transporting drugs without providing evidence, which has raised concerns from legal experts about the unprecedented use of military force on civilians outside of a war zone. Traditional international law requires either the consent of the host nation or clear evidence of imminent threat to justify military action within another country's territory. Trump's approach represents a fundamental shift in how the United States approaches the drug war. In the early hours of taking office in January, Trump signed an executive order designating certain drug cartels as terrorist organizations. This designation provides the legal framework for treating drug cartels as military targets, opening the door for the kind of military operations we're seeing in the Caribbean. The scale of the drug crisis facing America cannot be overstated. Federal authorities recently intercepted shipments from China destined for Mexican cartels that would have produced hundreds of millions of dollars worth of methamphetamine. These seizures represent just a fraction of the synthetic drugs flooding American streets, killing tens of thousands of Americans annually. The corruption runs deeper than most Americans realize. Mexican officials have openly acknowledged that drug cartels finance political campaigns and control significant portions of their government. This narco-state reality extends beyond Mexico into Venezuela, where the line between government officials and cartel leadership has essentially disappeared. The choice of Puerto Rico as the staging ground for these operations is strategically significant. The high-tech F-35 jets are being deployed to an airfield in Puerto Rico, a U.S. Caribbean island territory of more than 3 million people. U.S. sources familiar with the matter told AFP on condition of anonymity. Puerto Rico's location provides the perfect launching point for operations throughout the Caribbean while remaining on U.S. territory, avoiding the diplomatic complications that would come with basing these operations in other countries. The effectiveness of this military approach is already showing results, according to Trump administration officials. I will tell you, boat traffic is substantially down in the area that happened, Trump further explained. It's a runway to the United States, and boat traffic is very substantially down on the runway. The administration argues that the show of force is already deterring drug trafficking operations in the region, but critics question both the legality and the wisdom of this approach. U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar, a Democrat from Minnesota, condemned what she called Trump's lawless actions in the southern Caribbean. Congress has not declared war on Venezuela or Tren de Aragua, and the mere designation of a group as a terrorist organization does not give any president carte blanche to conduct military operations without congressional authorization. The broader implications of this deployment extend beyond the immediate Caribbean theater. Dan Grazier, the senior fellow and director of the National Security Reform Program at the Stimson Center, told Military.com in an interview Friday that selecting the stealth strike fighter likely was less about strategy and all about messaging. I'm willing to bet that this is more about strategic signaling than it is about actual military effectiveness, Grazier said. The message being sent is clear. The United States is willing to use its most advanced military capabilities against drug cartels and their state sponsors. The timing of this deployment is also significant. We're not talking about that, but we are talking about the fact that you had an election, which was a very strange election. To put it mildly, Trump said, referring to the contested 2024 election, the Venezuelan government says President Nicolas Maduro won. The disputed election results provide additional justification for treating Maduro's government as illegitimate, making military action easier to justify both domestically and internationally. Venezuela's military capabilities, while significant in regional terms, are no match for advanced U.S. systems. The country's Air Force relies heavily on older F-16 aircraft and Russian-supplied systems that would struggle against fifth-generation stealth fighters. However, the real question isn't whether the U.S. could win a military confrontation, but whether such a confrontation serves American interests and regional stability. The deployment also raises questions about escalation control. Once military forces are engaged and shots are being fired, the situation can quickly spiral beyond anyone's control. The Venezuelan flyovers of U.S. ships demonstrate how quickly tensions can escalate when military forces operate in close proximity with unclear rules of engagement. Regional allies and neighbors are watching this deployment with considerable concern. Maduro, a leftist firebrand whose last election in 2024 was seen by Washington as illegitimate, has denounced the U.S. buildup as the greatest threat our continent has seen in the last 100 years. While Maduro's rhetoric is often hyperbolic, the scale of the U.S. military deployment does represent an unprecedented show of force in the region during peacetime. The success or failure of this approach will likely determine whether similar military solutions are applied to drug problems elsewhere. If the F-35 deployment and associated military pressure succeed in significantly reducing drug trafficking from Venezuela, we can expect to see similar approaches applied to other drug-producing regions. If it fails or leads to broader conflict, it could discredit the military approach to counter narcotics for years to come. The human cost of this escalation is already becoming apparent. The killing of 11 people in the speedboat attack represents a significant escalation in the lethality of U.S. counter-narcotics operations. While the administration claims these were cartel members, the lack of transparent evidence and due process raises serious questions about the rules of engagement and civilian protection in these operations. The F-35 deployment to Puerto Rico represents more than just another military operation. It's a fundamental shift in how America approaches the drug war. By deploying the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world against drug cartels, Trump is sending an unmistakable message that he views this as a military conflict rather than a law enforcement problem. Whether this approach succeeds in reducing drug trafficking or leads to broader regional conflict remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the Caribbean will never be the same. The age of treating drug cartels as purely criminal organizations is over. In Trump's America, they're now military targets, and the F-35s heading to Puerto Rico prove that the gloves are officially off.